Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report, and I'm here with my ever-present partner, mate, Linda. And Linda, we were discussing something as we drove by some of the streams that I talked about trout fishing, and I think it's really important to pass this on. You know, folks, when we're fishing all these streams in our area for trout or for anything else, this would include fishing the Grass River, the Racket River for bass in the summer or muskies. But when we get on the stream, a lot of times we have to access this from some place that isn't an official boat launching place like the DEC does provide along some of the bigger tributaries. And I think it's really important that we comment about this because we were driving along the Deer River on 11B, and I pointed to a spot where I said last year I tried to trout fish there, and the only way to get to the water, the pool that I wanted to fish, was actually going along somebody's shoreline. And people have to realize that this is not just a given right. You know, we need to either ask permission or understand that anytime we access any of our favorite waters to fish for, you know, any of the places I've talked about, it's important that we leave those areas exactly as we find them. And you had an interesting take on this.
Well, Don, I'm sure your listeners are aware that a lot of these water bodies have property adjoining them, and property owners have been very generous in allowing people who want to fish to access the water from their property. But I noted that in some of these areas, folks aren't as careful as they might be. And I'd seen a couple of bottles, and you know, if folks are carrying in something to enjoy while they're fishing, they need to carry the container, the wrapping out to honor the property owner, because that individual has said, yes, you can fish from my property, I don't mind. And the DEC has posted signs in many of these areas saying that access is given through the permission of the property owner. And we should remember they pay taxes, and so this is theirs, but they're willing to share with others who would like to gain access to the water. I think that's really important to remember.
Yeah, you know, another part of this too is that as we've seen on TV, I think it was on Spectrum. They were talking about two bald eagles that had somehow got contaminated by rat poison, and just realize that any of the birds or animals from the given area that we're fishing could be harmed by things left on the ground. Anything bright or shiny is an attraction, not just to fish, but to animals or birds that might be in the same area. And they're going to consume that, and then that blocks their whole digestive system.
Very true. So wrappings, food wrappings can become a real danger to birds.
And we talked about it before, leaving bits of fishing line on the ground is a real threat.
Yes.
Or even, you know, pieces of packaging on the ground.
Yes, and not just for birds or local animals, but a lot of folks this time of year try to get out and they want to walk their dogs. And the little wee dogs, sometimes they're so inquisitive and they'll get caught up in some of these things. You know, the fishing line, we saw that last year at the intake where someone had just dropped fishing line, and a little dog was, you know, playing with it and chewing on it, and I was concerned. It can become a choking hazard.
Sure, it really can. And I think this is really important. You know, yesterday I went out trying to catch a trout, and the place that I went, and I didn't tell you about this, along where I wanted to access the shore of the water, somebody had broken a glass jar that they must have brought either bait or something in before me. And I was reluctant to go along that area where that glass was, because if I happened to fall, you know, that you could fall on that glass. And it was an obstacle now that has been left there by somebody that probably doesn't realize how dangerous something like that can be.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Very
I think
true.
this is something, you know, I've wanted to pass on for ages. It's become a real issue with ice fishermen over some of the areas that they've accessed. For example, Black Lake or down at Chameau Bay. It's something that, you know, we can take away all our privileges that we have just by being careless. And I think it's really an important thing for people to think about.
Yes, but I would leave your listeners with just one final thought. When we've had some of the tournaments, some of the smaller ones, we've noted that anglers are very protective and they do try to be good stewards and pick up and keep everything contained so that they're not leaving a mess and they're not destroying the waterways. So just some vigilance and paying attention to what we do when we go into a beautiful natural area.
You know, I can relate this to along the St. Lawrence River, where people, you know, sometimes get offended because bass fishermen will move in and start fishing around their docks. This is no different in talking about the shoreline along tributaries and streams and brooks. It's the very same thing. So you can understand why, you know, people don't want to look out and say, oh, gee, there's someone fishing in our front yard.
Yes.
But that's basically what it sometimes becomes.
Mm-hmm.
So just general awareness is really important.
Absolutely.
Until next time, folks, this is Don and Linda with the North Country Fishing Report.